Welcome to the RealTrending podcast, where we speak to the brightest minds in real estate about business, growth, trends, and strategies. I'm your host, Tracey Velt. I'm the Senior Director of Data and Content for HW Media. Today, I'd like to welcome Kurt Carlton, co-founder and president of New Western. So welcome, Kurt.
Hey, glad to be here, as always.
Yeah, I want to get into at the beginning because I had a lot of questions about what exactly your business model was, and you're an investment marketplace and you offer properties that are difficult to sell through traditional means. So why don't you expand on that and talk a little bit about how your platform works?
Yeah, so in its simplest form, we solve the biggest problem that local real estate investors have, and that's just finding property. And that's the basics. We just make everything around that offering very easy. We have a platform. There's 150,000 of these real estate investors on the platform, and they're all looking for their next flip opportunity or house that they're going to fix up and turn into a rental. So it's all value add properties. They're the type of properties where the investor can go in and add square footage or put an accessory dwelling unit in the back of the house to increase the cash flow value or something like that. It's a national marketplace. We've got locations from Greenville, South Carolina to Los Angeles. It's just all around the country. We trade a house about every 13 minutes.
Okay, great. And I know we talked a little bit about how you work with real estate agents and brokers. And I want to get into detail about that because that is our audience. And, when they think of real estate investors, finding these properties on their own, they're kind of like, okay, how does that impact me? So why don't you talk a little bit about how you're working with them?
Well, we generally work with the real estate investors because they have listings that they come across that they don't, they're not going to look great on their website. That's the type of, they generally bring us inventory. So we'll come into a market, we'll become established, and over time, the agent community will just understand our utility. I've got a friend that's a listing agent here in Dallas, and she does really well. She's in maybe a little bit more into the higher end market. And she'll do 20 listings a year or something like that. But she always gets one every year where she says she makes the least amount of money and does the most amount of work. And I think realtors, they care about their reputation, their customers, they care about their income and their time, I think. So when they have a customer, they're so service oriented, they think maybe it's the best if the property needs a lot of work. If it's one of these value add properties, they think it's the best service to help them with the contracting, do all this. And what the realtor ends up doing is becoming, a project manager in that. It takes a lot of time. It's probably not the best use of their case. And what a lot of these agents have realized is when they come across that property where they're going to have to deal with a contractor, the contractors, how often have you had a contractor come, through on budget and on time, right? So it's a little bit of a recipe for that realtor's reputation to be blemished, I think, in those situations. And they just find it a better option to just turn that property over to New Western, where we have a marketplace with 150,000 investors. And generally, if these are repairs that a homeowner, it might be 100,000, 150,000. A real estate investor that has a full-time crew, is used to managing these things, they might be able to do that work for 60,000. So generally, net, it's a better result for the customer, for the client. And it can be done in a day, as opposed to a realtor taking 6 months of their time and going through all this. So that's generally how we work with realtors. They just realize that we're a very important phone number in their address book when they come across one of these value add opportunities. It makes more sense to just let us move it for them as opposed to putting it on the MLS.
Is there any advantage to them or payout to them for this property? Do they get a referral fee or?
Yeah. We don't ask for a commission. We're a buyer, not an
Right.
agent in the transaction. So generally, they found a buyer for the agent. They can credit that commission to the listing, to the client, or they can keep it themselves for managing both sides of the transaction. So it's generally, they take their most time consuming, most difficult transaction of the year and they turn it into their easiest, and they're probably their most profitable in some situations as well.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit, there's such a dearth of inventory right now. And I was shocked I thought, how many homes could you possibly have on this marketplace? because right now, it's hard to find homes. We have like a housing affordability issue. We have a housing inventory issue. And, you had told me, I can't remember the number now, so you'll have to refresh my memory, but tell me a little bit about that problem and how New Western is really working to maybe not completely solve it, but to move that along.
So we're right in the heart of this great renovation, right? So we built 27 million homes leading up to 2008 and then nothing. So, I mean, you guys report on it every day, right? We're missing 5 million homes in the US. A huge imbalance between the demand and the supply, and prices have skyrocketed. But this infrastructure problem that we have in the US today with inventory, it's not something the builders are able to solve. The government's not going to solve it, but I think we can. And that's because there's 15 million vacant homes in the US. And a lot of those are vacant because they're second homes or Airbnbs or whatever, but a lot of them are uninhabitable. And this is really the role of the real estate investor that comes in. And that's the local small real estate investor is a valuable component of the ecosystem here, right? Because they're able to identify these vacant homes and return them to market. And this is usually work that's well beyond the capabilities and desires of a homeowner to do, right? We're talking about jackhammering up the slab of a home to repair, leaky plumbing, things like that, black mold, foundation issues, just all these issues that we find ourselves in. And all those homes that we built, prior to 2008, 27 million homes, they're all getting to the age right now where they're all starting to experience major repairs and major issues. And they're all coming back online right now. So there's a lot of work ahead for these real estate investors. And they're helping to solve that problem. And if you just look at the size and scale of how we're solving that problem today, the last National Association of Home Builders forecast was that we were going to build 830,000 homes in the US this year. Well, there's probably going to be 400,000 home flips, right? Where you're just identifying houses, putting them back in the market. And that doesn't even include the houses that we're buying out there, fixing up and turning into rentals. So really the real estate investors and the work they're doing out there in the field is really starting to approach the impact that builders have on the market and the inventory that comes online too from a real estate investor, at least at New Western. And we're the biggest in this space, right? We're the category leader here. Our inventory is about 40% more affordable than a new build. So the builders just can't deliver that kind of inventory today. So it really falls on the real estate investor to attack that core band of affordability and to provide that for the US. So it's good. These real estate investors, like I said, they're a valuable part of the ecosystem. And even though they're not charity workers, they do this to make money. Their interests are directly aligned with the interest of the community when it comes to just providing more affordable home supply. So it's good.
Do you find that, I know, the investors in general and a lot of markets hold the properties, generally those are more properties that don't need a lot of work, where they rent them out. But the investors that you're working with, because obviously real estate agents want inventory, they want these homes to get back on the market. What are you seeing out there as far as the investors that you're seeing come through your platform?
You hear a lot of news reporting that everybody's shifting to rental properties. That's certainly not the case with us. We've got 150,000 real estate investors on the platform we communicate with almost daily. We often run surveys just to find out what's going on. Our last big survey, which is the biggest that's ever been completed, I think, in the US for this category of individual, showed us that 52% of our real estate investors are buying to flip. So they're looking to return the inventory back on the market.
Okay, and was that the June 2023 survey that you did? So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the takeaways and highlights of that report. What did you find that was interesting?
We're always surprised. The news doesn't often align with the reality sometimes, at least the big headlines on the big outlets. But they're very bullish right now. We've had a big market shift. I think everybody is looking to continue what they're doing, and most of these investors are looking to increase their business. I think a lot of the issues that they were dealing with before, in 2021, part of the issue was everyone was just so desperate for housing inventory that if you were a real estate investor and you wanted to buy a value add house, you were competing with a traditional buyer because they were just so desperate for a house, they would buy any house. And there wasn't really a gap in the price between a house that needed a lot of work and one that didn't. And now that gap exists a little bit more. There's a little bit more room for real estate investors to be a little bit more profitable. I think a lot of the news that's reported out there on the profitability of home flips is skewed because, you've got the iBuyer element out there that are considered flippers by at least the Redfin reporting and things like that. So there's some noise. We do a good job, I think, of peeling back the onion and really focusing on the category of the independent real estate investor, and they're doing quite well, and they're pretty bullish right now.
And what percentage of the investors on your platform are more like mom and pop? What is the typical investor? How many properties do they, fix and flip over a year?
So it took me 10 years to realize we sold a passion product. You think about real estate investors and you think they're in front of a spreadsheet all day and they're, all they think about is return on investment. But the reality is a lot of these individuals are, I'll give you a persona. It's generally a corporate refugee, somebody that's joining the great resignation world, right? Turning a side hustle into maybe a full-time reality. A lot of husband and wife teams, they want to create, they want to add value, they want to build something in their neighborhood, in their community. So these are a lot of individuals that are doing 10 houses a year. And maybe of those 10, 8 will be flips that they'll fix up and resell. And maybe 2 they'll keep as rentals. And if you think about the flips as their income, and you think about the rentals as their 401k, and that's kind of how they view the world. So very small, independent, local real estate investors. Over 90% of our investors on our platform are buying houses that are within 30 minutes of their home.
And what are the challenges that you're seeing just in the general community? Like, what are you doing to build relationships with the agents? How are you getting, that word out to with real estate agents specifically?
So we're starting to communicate with agents much more. We're starting to build that messaging. I think we've been a company that's been misunderstood since 2008, and we haven't done a lot to fix that. I guess we've just kind of kept our heads down and got to work. But I think now we're starting to pull our heads up, and one of the reasons why we're just seeing more and more listing agents bringing us inventory. And I think, we built 27 million homes leading up to 2008 and the 20 years leading up to 2008. It was more than we've ever built before. Those houses are starting to have issues for the first time ever. If you think about demographics, they talk about boomers and millennials, housing is the same way. We had this huge amount of homes built in a 20-year period. And now those homes are built on concrete slabs. They've got 20-year roofs a lot of times, things like that. So major systems start to break in that 20 to 40-year period. So those houses are starting to become these big problem houses that maybe don't represent the most efficient listing or the best listing or the best customer experience to take it as a traditional listing for the seller. And those realtors are starting to bring us more inventory. So as that starts to happen, we're starting to realize, wow, okay, there's 2 million listing agents in the U.S. It makes a lot of sense to get the messaging out, get them to understand the resource that we are. We're not a competitor. We're a buyer. And that message is starting to resonate, especially as we become larger in all the markets in which we're in.
Yeah, it's an interesting model. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk more about kind of entrepreneurship. And I ask this in all of my podcasts. And what I find is that a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders in the real estate industry have multiple aha moments, but there's usually one that really resonates or sticks out as something that you went through or did where you realized, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity, or this is whatever it is. It could be personal or professional. What was your aha moment?
Big question. So, ones that jump out to me, I guess today,
Mhm,
uh, like I mentioned, realizing our product was just so much more than a financial opportunity
mhm,
uh, to our customers. That was a huge aha moment for me, just to realize, people are just these multifaceted,
mhm,
you know, um, people that have all these other desires besides just the investing, right?
mhm,
So that was a big thing for us at New Western specifically. Um, I think I've had a lot of aha moments around just building a business around technology.
mhm,
We were a company that benefited in a meaningful way in the beginning from technology and building technology. We really had a lot of advantages that we built when we really organized what was a very chaotic and inefficient foreclosure market in
mhm.
2008, just simply with some technology that other people did not have or didn't think to build. Um, and that really ran its course. And as a result of us having a lot of success with that early on, explosive success, we started to tech everything. And we really learned a lot of aha moments from that. I remember just realizing that so much debt in terms of effort and maintenance goes into these technology. And we had this big end-to-end platform that we had to essentially um, rebuild the engine while the car was driving 200 miles per hour. I mean, New Western's been a company that's grown 40% a year every year for the last 15 years. So it's never been able to slow down to focus on those things. So we hired the CTO that took Invitation Homes public. He came in. He had done this sort of before. We rebuilt everything. It was a very painful number of years, but now the real aha moment is when we look at technology, we try to build things that are not superficial. And there's a lot of thought that goes into, okay, what are we trying to solve? And it may not be the most glamorous thing, but it's practical. And if you look at our marketplace today, it may not have all the bells and whistles and the sleek things. And, you can't buy a house with crypto or anything like that, but it works. We trade a house every 13 minutes. So I think getting us focused and more deciding on what technology we're not going to build versus what we are going to build was a huge learning curve aha moment for us as an organization.
Yeah, definitely. And just making that technology scalable is a, I mean, that's an issue that a lot of real estate companies have as well, like real estate residential companies. And we didn't really talk about this, but what was your background before you founded New Western?
I've been in real estate pretty much my entire professional life.
Mhm.
Um, it's a 7 day a week um, gig. But yeah, I started in the U.S. Virgin Islands with a development project. I've been in ultra high end real estate down to what we do today, which is, value add technology marketplace in various roles. So I've seen the real estate investment playbook, in 2008 have to be, 10 years worth of playbook thrown in the trash and have to be rewritten. Um, I've seen the iBuyers come and go, um, to some capacity, all these things. So it's really where I've been.
Yeah. In speaking of iBuyers, I mean, what is your take on that? In the market today, do you work with any of them, or probably not?
Sure. Yeah.
But
No, we do. We
okay.
stand really nicely next to the
Hmm.
iBuyers, Um, if you go on realtor.com or anything like that, we're next to them all as the,
Hmm.
buyer. But I think we complement each other. An iBuyer is looking for a house that they can go in and they can paint the kitchen,
Yeah.
right? And they're really um, trying to they're going after the real estate agent market, right? They're just
Hmm.
trying to make for a certain segment of home sellers. They're trying to make a more simplified transaction for individuals that want convenience. We're entirely different, where we're dealing with the types of transactions that an iBuyer doesn't want to buy. An iBuyer doesn't want to buy a house that's got $80,000 in repairs and foundation issues and things like that, right? That takes a local real estate investor. So I think we work well together. They have inventory that we're interested in. we come across some sellers where we don't add value and they would be better served with an iBuyer. So there's a partnership there. And as far as the future of the iBuyers, I mean, that's still unknown. We'll see. I think the timing of the market has created a lot of problems for them. So it's hard to tell if the model actually works today or not based on what we just went through.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about business lessons learned. So what do you feel is your greatest business lesson that you've learned?
I think, we mentioned two of them, or at least
Mhm.
one with the technology. I think that's important. I think the
Yeah.
entire real estate industry is starting to gravitate towards that. If you see what
Mhm.
Remax is doing, they're leaning up on their technology as well and
Mhm.
getting more focused and intentful. I think that's important. I think every day in business is an 80-20.
Mhm.
We're a company that doesn't try to make everything perfect. We're used to lots of problems happening around us that we can live with, and just focusing on what's important and fixing that issue. So if you were to work for New Western today, you could point to 100 different problems internally that are issues, and the intent is, coming in is like, we should fix that, we should fix this, and we say, just slow down. We're going to focus on the important stuff, and that's how you grow 40% a year, right? Is having that kind of mentality and being able to live with the chaos and being able to 80-20 things and realize what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, are you kind of like a podcast guy, a reader? Like, where do you look? Maybe you look for people. Where do you look for inspiration and motivation, and creativity in evolving your platform?
It's hard. I sat next to a guy on an airplane that was in the middle of building a property management company, and he said,
Mhm.
when you get to 1,500 doors, you do this and you use this system, and then when you get to 3,000, you can do this, and then when you get to 5,000, you can acquire this type. And there was a playbook. We don't have that at New Western. We're in this emerging industry
Mhm.
that's not even well defined yet. It's hyper fragmented. We've always been kind of at the edge of the jungle, bushwhacking, not knowing what's on the other side. So
Yeah.
lots of lessons learned along the way, falling down, picking yourself
Mhm.
up, scraping off your knee, things like that. So when you're looking for information, there's really nothing, there's not a path to follow on the industry we're in, but you can look to other industries that are maybe similar. I enjoy reading about other individuals and how they built their companies in other emerging industries. Um, I don't have a tremendous amount of time for podcasting, but I love to read. And, I read the entirety of Housing Wire every morning when it comes into my inbox. And I think going to a lot of these events, I think, is important because just even there is content there, but showing up there in person, talking to people, just understanding what everybody's feeling and going through and the sentiment of the industry, I think is just incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were excited to have you at Gathering this year. I know that it ended up being a great event. So hope it was a great event for you as well.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I think the weather could have been better, right? But
Yeah,
we've
it
been
was a little
dealing with
hot.
that for the last 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're close. We're having it in Scottsdale next year, and it'll be in April. So hopefully we don't run into those same heat issues with the pickleball. That was I didn't play, but it was entertaining for sure. So
It's healthy to play pickleball in 100-degree weather.
yeah, exactly. So where do you see the most opportunity in today's real estate market? You know, just in general, not necessarily for your company, but just in the market in general.
I think you're going to expect to see more of these houses that need work. I
Hmm.
think everybody talks about that.
Yeah.
I think this great renovation is here to stay. I think if you look at the forecast around um, home improvement companies, areas like that, I think that's strong. Um, I think there's a real opportunity for. I mentioned, everybody that's in this great resignation and
Hmm.
looking at side hustles. I think the prospect of being one of these individuals where you take a little bit more risk, but you have some control over your day to day and you become a real estate investor, that prospect is real today. More and more people are becoming real estate investors. I think there's a lot of room and opportunity for those individuals. If I'm a real estate agent, I think I with a lack of inventory, I need to be more prepared for more of my listings to be in this distressed category at least, or value add category. And I need to think about how, if I'm a broker, how I align that to be a more efficient P&L item, because that can easily take up a lot of your agent's time and effort, which is important. But I think I think just SFR as an asset, not, sales will be low for a very long time. And that's just because it doesn't matter, real estate, interest rates have to drop quite a bit for everybody to start putting their homes back on the market. So I think you're going to have inventory challenges. But as an asset class, if you're a landlord or you're somebody that wants to buy a house to live in it, I think the asset value is pretty well insulated. And I don't think we're going to have these years where we have amazing home price appreciation, unless interest rates drop like a rock or something like that. But again, I don't think there's a massive negative correction coming.
Yeah. I'm not sure we're going to see interest rates drop anytime soon, but we can dream. So finally, what does the future hold for your firm? Anything coming up, any new innovation, anything you're doing that you want our audience to know about?
Well, the boring answer is clarity of purpose. We've always had it, right? We don't have any outside investors or anything like that driving the ship or anything. We can stay focused and just focused on what we do and just making it bigger. There's a lot of just organic opportunity for us ahead. I don't think we're going to add any kind of unique side products anytime soon. I think we're just going to keep trying to solve the number one problem that real estate investors have, which is trying to find this inventory. And that's what the world needs today. And if you solve big problems, if you slay the dragon, you get the gold, right? So just staying zero focused on that is where I think I see us being the next at least 5 years.
Well, great. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for joining the RealTrending podcast. It was nice meeting you in person at the gathering and finally getting a chance to talk. So thanks so much.
It is always a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me again.